The year 2020 is gradually coming to an end, but call it the year of COVID-19 and you won't be wrong. The world hadn't seen anything like it, and expectedly, the preoccupation of science and scientists has been how to find an answer to the coronavirus. Well, thankfully, scientists have been investigating a plethora of drugs that may be repurposed to fight COVID-19. The hope is that some could be discovered and as a treatment for this virus. And a US-based company has also developed a vaccine, so far found to be 90% effective at protecting people. Well, these are the strongest signal yet that the unprecedented quest to develop a vaccine that could help end the pandemic just might succeed. Breaking every scientific speed record and underlying science as pivotal to solving most global challenges. Now, how can Nigeria develop scientific solutions to her challenges, beginning with COVID-19? What hurdles must be dismantled to pave the way for relevant scientific innovations? This is the thrust of our conversation on Nigeria today. I am Anne Jibuno. Joining us to discuss scientific approach to tackling COVID-19 is Dr. John Tor AGBIDYE. He's an integrative. Thank you very much for that. Integrative is in integrative medicine and a neurotoxicologist. He's also the founder, and chief executive officer of In-Country Medicare. Yeah. Welcome to the program.
Okay. Right.
Thank you very much for joining us. Yeah. The topic is quite timely and it's quite apt, especially with development. But let's start from the very beginning. Briefly define science, very briefly. And how has science been able to solve most of the global challenges we find?
Well, thank you very much. I always appreciate the opportunity to be on the air to really throw out, some light. Science is actually an investigative art that you start from the unknown, then through a lay down process, then you find answers to unknown. That is the simple definition of science. And this requires a certain amount of discipline, because it is an act that is actually standardized. That is to say, if I'm doing a scientific study here in Nigeria or developing a drug here in Nigeria, I use certain parameters and conditions that the same person in Japan or United States, when he uses those parameters and conditions, we should be able to arrive at the same result. That is science. And it is actually indisputable.
And it certainly has helped in solving many global challenges.
That's why I say from the unknown to the, getting answers to the unknown.
Now, then science certainly has a big role to play, a huge one to play in addressing the COVID-19 challenge, certainly. Now, some scientists have listed some drugs that could serve as the treatment for the COVID-19 virus. What's your take on this strategy?
Well, as I said earlier, and science is actually investigative. When we talk about COVID-19 in particular, when we had the outbreak, and that was later classified by WHO as a pandemic, we had little or no knowledge about this disease. It is true that you had different strains of the virus or species of the virus that had manifested in the past. You have SARS-CoV-1 and then SARS-CoV-2, but this SARS-CoV-2 manifesting itself in the form of a disease known as COVID-19 presented itself to us when we were not prepared. So many unknowns, and that is why science came in. And as of now that I'm talking, it is almost a year. It started in December, almost about 10 or 11 months now. A lot of the unknown that came out at the beginning have been known now.
So, in other words, the issue of the drugs.
Drugs. No. Yeah, even in the issue of the drug. This is. I mean, the truth about it, I have a background in in drug development. So from that angle, I can tell you how drugs are, developed. They started, you have all of them that came, some of them became controversial. But our recent understanding, if you take the case of President Trump, how he was managed with drugs like remdesivir that were very controversial. Now we've gotten to know the better mechanism on how these drugs work. Even chloroquine, which is also controversial, they've come to have a better understanding on how this works. Briefly stated, you see, why we didn't know from the beginning is that the disease has two phases. That is COVID-19. You have the virologic phase of the disease, which is dominated by viral replication. Then you have the immunologic phase of the disease, when it is dominated by exacerbated inflammation. So if you are in the virologic phase of the disease, you should be using drugs that should arrest or slow down the the viral replication.
So which is first, the viral or the immuno?
Oh, it is actually the viral. Yes, the virologic form of the disease. Because basically, if you look at the mechanisms of how the disease, how we are infected, and then it gets manifestation of signs, the virus comes into the body. The first thing it does, remember, a virus does not reproduce outside the body. The human body. It is when it comes in, then it gets into the cell that it starts replicating. That is multiplying or duplicating. So in those 4 to 10 days, in this virologic phase of the disease, you should be using agents or drugs that are to stop the viral replication. And that's why drugs like remdesivir comes in. It has been proven that it actually arrests viral replication. Then when it stays longer, it goes to the immunologic phase of the disease that is predominated by exacerbated inflammation. You should be using anti-inflammatory drugs. This is why drugs like prednisolone or the corticosteroids actually comes in. So you can say from a layman point of view too, if you are in the virologic phase of the disease and you are using anti-inflammatory, it is wrong. You are not doing it, but now I think we've gotten it right. If you look at the standard protocol that President Trump was actually used, it clearly was based on this understanding.
Yeah, let's talk about what Pfizer has come up with. 90% effective, the vaccine that just came out.
Yes, I think you really correct. Pfizer has just actually come up with a vaccine. Actually, it is in the phase 3 trial. But so far, they have demonstrated that the vaccine is 90% efficacious. United States Food and Drug Administration requires only 60% efficacy. But their vaccine, that as they have reported and shown, and I have access to those studies, I have actually studied them, it's actually 90% efficacious. But the drug of this is this. As I'm talking now, they've informed us by the end of November, they're going to only be able to come up with 500 million doses. Then they're saying that in 2021, they are going to come up with about 1.5 billion doses. But if you look at the population of the world, where are we? And take note, this vaccine that they have actually developed it should be given twice. So if you are talking about 500 million doses, you are just going to serve only 250 million people.
That brings me to Nigeria. Let's talk about Nigeria.
Okay.
How scientifically developed are we? Because certainly, like you said, the vaccine will not be enough. The doses will not be enough for everyone in the world. So we must look inwards to solve our problems. How scientifically developed are we?
Well, the question of scientific development obviously is very obvious, because the various government agencies have come out to say it, and actually confirmed the fact that our healthcare system was in a serious dilemma. And just like all over the world, we are not prepared for COVID-19. However, following the pandemicity of the disease, we made some efforts here, and some of our agencies have actually had access to funds, and they are trying to see how they can, do our own indigenous development of, vaccines. But I'm going to tell you one thing. Vaccines or drug development is not a child's play. What do I mean in terms of financial commitments? You need robust funds for you to do this, effectively. I was a study director with Novartis Pharmaceutical involved in drug development. I can tell you what it means to actually develop, drug. You have different phases. You have what you call the discovery phase. Then you have what you call the preclinical safety phase before you go on to the clinical trial phases. And all these steps are capital intensive.
So
okay, yeah, they're very capital intensive. And typically, just like drug development to an vaccine, you may start up with over 200, candidates, what we call drug candidates. Those are the different drugs that you can test when they go through these phases and are able to go to the clinical, trial phase and approved by the regulatory agencies. It takes quite a lot, and a lot of, funds have to be injected in, both in terms of personnel, the right environment. Then you're talking about the infrastructure, and then the intellectual capacity to do that. You must have well-trained people to do the research.
So when do you see Nigeria developing maybe a drug or a vaccine?
Well, I think the truth is this: we have, various agencies that are tasked with that. But if you want me to be very honest about you, in terms of, drug development, Nigeria has not come to that, phase yet. Maybe COVID-19 has come in, it will actually trigger us to make sure that these things are done properly. And when you talk about financial involvement, let me use this opportunity to appeal to Nigeria. The question of financing projects and this, and it should not just be the responsibility of the federal government or the government alone. The private sector should also get involved and make sure that they inject funds and money into research for drug development. If we don't do this, I'm going to tell you one thing again, no other person is going to do this for us. And Nigeria has the capacity, the capability. All we need is that critical mobilization of our financial and human resources.
Would you say alternative medicine might be it for Nigeria?
There is no doubt about that. And on that note, let me also applaud the effort of the federal government. The Federal Ministry of Health now has a directorate, or a division with the traditional, complementary, and then alternative medicine, of which I happen to be a member of the expert committee that is actually studying out and coming up, developing the various curriculum that will come up, and then we'll be teaching, integrative or alternative or complementary medicine, in Nigeria, as it is being taught, elsewhere. But right now, as I'm talking to you, integrative medicine is actually very, virgin in the country, because not many people know it. Most of what we do is conventional medicine. Then the traditional medicine, which but in the past it was actually masked. Nobody wanted to hear or to be identified with traditional medicine. But with the creation of the Department of Traditional, Complementary, and Alternative Medicine, it's really gives us hope that we're going to join the queue and do what most parts of the world that are actually doing in terms of the healthcare and then medical practice in particular.
Yeah, you mentioned the private sector. How can the private sector key into all these assets that we have? You mentioned so many assets we have that could help in developing some of these drugs and vaccines to help just even beyond COVID. How can the private sector come in? Because in other climes, they drive this.
Fantastic, Anne. Let me tell you one thing. There is a saying that where there is a we, there is an a. And this is to say that if the private sector now gets to recognize the need for this, there are various ways that they can fund research. You have they can set up foundations that make money available in terms of grant, so that the professionals or university research scientists will have to apply for this grant, and this grant must be competitive. They must be competitive, just like it is done elsewhere in the world. In the US, you talk about the Rockefeller, Foundation. They have grant that you can assess and then do your own research. That will be beneficial to the nation. All right.
Now, a break beckons now, so we can get the input of every Nigerian as compiled by Alika Okpanachi-Arua. Don't go away. The program continues shortly.
Nigerians have the knowledge. We believe that the best scientists that could come out from this world too can come from this part of the world, Nigerians. So it's just a platform. And our own leaders now in this century should be able to be thinking scientifically too. They should be they are not thinking scientifically, they are still thinking in analog. That's the very truth. So if they are thinking scientifically, we will get there, because they will begin to engage those that have the mental capacity to think scientifically. They will begin to engage them. They will begin to bring in opportunities. They will begin to put in seminars, to go to secondary schools, universities, bring them in, select them, those that have the capacity.
In Nigeria here, we have people who are good scientists, but I don't know if our Nigerian government have been able to give them listening ears, you understand, so that they can bring out what they have upstairs. So they need to give them listening ears, so that those that are science inclined here in Nigeria can bring out the ideas that they have.
The government efforts on the medicals or medicals in Nigeria generally is not enough at all, compared to other countries.
The government to at least raise the standard of our hospitals, especially when it comes to responses, when it comes to emergency issues, and the drugs. You understand, we need more quality drugs.
Our orthodox medicine, all the leaves God created, they are all meant for one thing or the other. But we are deceived that they are killers. Today, look at coronavirus, which they brought from China. Our China was still healing us here.
Welcome back. The program is Nigeria Today on NTA News 24, and we're discussing scientific approach to tackling COVID-19. And still with me in the studio is Dr. John Tor AGBIDYE, an interactive medicine neurotoxicologist. He's also the chief executive officer at In-Country Medicare Abuja. Interesting perspective there, don't you agree?
Very well so. I liked the comments that, they all made. But of particular note is the call on the government to really take the lead. The government should pump a lot of resources into research. We have all it takes all over the world. Drivers of, research, captains of industries. You go there, Nigerians. Now, why can't we do it back home here? That's why we need that willpower, and we need the leadership, from the government to actually take the bull by the horn. Also, the comment on, recognition of, complementary or alternative, or traditional medicine is very appropriate. I'm really happy that the government is now looking into this direction. The bill to actually create, the council, the president has actually signed that, and it is going to go back to, the Senate for, final assenting. And I think this is a development in the right, direction to make sure that we don't just look only in one direction. First, increase and buffer the capacity of our research, and also integrate other aspect of medical care. WHO actually recognizes 3 arms of medical care. You talk about traditional medicine, you talk about then you talk about the orthodox medicine, and then you talk about the complementary and alternative medicine. So all this, any nation, including Nigeria shouldn't be an exception. You should all embrace these 3 arms of healthcare as recognized by the WHO.
Now, what other obstacles, Doctor, do you see before Nigeria in the area of science, and how do you think we can dismantle these obstacles beyond what you've mentioned?
Let's not deceive ourselves. One of the main obstacles, as I see, there is a lacuna in our educational system. I can tell the time that I went through the university or secondary school, when I got into the United States for my advanced training or graduate training, I could compete with any other American because the level and standard of education I received was superior, was superb. So I was able to do that, and that's why I achieved what I actually achieved. But these days, you hear all sorts of, malpractices. People don't want to sit down and then study very well. The teachers too, with all due respect, there is a fault, there is a lacuna on how they are teaching. Now, there is a negative feedback. It could be due to, the poor conditions, but I'm glad that some time ago I understand that the salaries have been, upgraded or, reviewed. Because education is the greatest wealth any nation can, have. So we should invest in our education. Make sure that we have quality education. That is the only way we can produce superior scientists that would do what we are supposed to do.
So our curriculum must be looked into.
Our curriculum needs, and then not only the curriculum, you can have, let me tell you one thing, Nigerians were very brilliant when it comes to writing. We can crank documents, one of the best in the world, but the implementation is actually lacking. So we should have that in place, and it should be implemented properly.
Now, given the way the vaccines, drugs are developed, you are aware of how these processes take place in other climes. In other climes and even in Nigeria, when do you see the world breathing a sigh of relief from COVID-19?
Well, that question actually has a double-edged, double-edged sword. Just like I'm talking to you now, United States is almost on the second or third, lockdown. Germany, the same thing. And even here, we really got to be careful. Let me take this opportunity to really alert the nation. Let's not just rest on our own laurels. You can see there is need for a sustainability in implementation of the non-pharmaceutical, protective, means. We should not just rest. See what is happening elsewhere. So we must continue to use things like, those protective means, washing of hands, use of masks, and observing social and physical, distances. But all this, as I've always advocated, our body is in charge of any foreign thing that comes in, and that is our immune system. People should be educated on how to up-regulate or immunomodulate their immune system. But you have all sorts of, immune boosters that if you prefer to take these things, by the time you are there in your sick bed, advancing to, intensive care units, up to the point of, ventilators, it will cost you more and even cost you your life. So I believe every Nigerian should be aware on how to boost our immune system or increase our immune system or immunomodulate our immune system.
All right, let's briefly talk about the post-COVID.
Post-COVID-19 syndrome.
But,
Yes.
but we're completely out of time. You take that with by telling us if you're satisfied with the way Nigeria has handled COVID-19, all this while, and tell us briefly what more we should do in 1 minute, please.
Well, okay, the COVID-19, post-COVID-19 syndrome simply means that those who have recovered from COVID-19, they still suffer some illnesses. Chiefly, the main reason is that COVID-19 does a very devastating destruction in the body. The immune system is actually cranked down. So these people are vulnerable to all sorts of, infection. They have headache, they have shortness of breath sometimes, but they should do them. Then, lastly, let me start from the positive note. Yeah, the presidential task force that was inaugurated did and is still doing. And as a nation, if I'm to scholars, I would just put it to myself. But we could also do better. We could do better. And what is happening now, it looks like we're going back to, sleep, thinking that things are over. Things are not over yet. Let's increase the number of testing and then the number of centers for isolation. We don't want to be caught unawares again, especially the number of testing. That is the only way you can confirm that COVID-19 is with you or COVID-19 is not with you. And may God help us to do this.
Yes, certainly. Dr. John Tor AGBIDYE, thank you for joining us today. Integrative medicine,
Integrative
medicine, yes.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Anne. You've done very well.
Thank you very much. Integrative medicine,
yeah.
neurotoxicologist for joining us today. Thank you.
And then once again, my appreciation for this opportunity. Always nice to be with the NTA.
Thank you. That's what you can take on the program today. You can watch this and other program, editions of the program on www.youtube.com/NTA News 24 Hub. I am Anne Jibuno. Thank you for joining us.